Feng Qing would rather die. As the esteemed eldest princess of the Great Xia Kingdom, she was widowed for 10 years in her previous life and devoted herself to protecting her husband and his entire family who were executed for committing a great mistake. For this reason, she even gave up her identity as the eldest princess and broke with the royal family. It was not until her father suddenly died of poisoning and the great changes in the summer that she realized. She has been serving her filial mother.In.Law for many years and has been spreading rumors behind her back to tarnish her reputation. Her sister.In.Law, whom she always maintained, secretly poisoned her, hoping that she would die early. Her carefully cultivated uncle personally stabbed her mother and imperial brother to death. The husband, who had been dead for 10 years, even hugged her trusted cousin and swaggered in front of her, becoming the quick son.In.Law of the rebel leader. He cut off her hands and feet, cut off her tongue, and let her watch with her own eyes as the bodies of his father, empress, and younger brother were trampled into flesh and mud, just to make her beloved smile. After vomiting blood and dying, Feng Qingning opened her eyes again and returned to the 7th day after the scumbag pretended to be dead. Looking at the kind-hearted family members who pretend to be kind and constantly want to profit from her, in this life, she will personally send each of them to hell. Later, the scumbag's whole family was in a state of embarrassment and knelt down to beg for mercy. Feng Qingning curled her lips and smiled sweetly. It's better to save some tears and leave them for Ling Qi. Chapter 1. Rebirth to the Scumbag, Top 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Princess, what's wrong with you? Wake up quickly. The voice of the maid kept ringing in her ears, and Feng Qingning on the bed suddenly opened her eyes. At the moment she opened her eyes, the excruciating pain all over her body and the strong hatred in her heart were like a surging tide, drowning her in it without breathing. Until she saw the clean and gentle veil above her head, she suddenly exhaled and her consciousness gradually returned. Princess, did you have a nightmare? The maid's concerned inquiry rang out again. Feng Qingning turned her head to look at the person beside her and said in a daze, red feather. How could it be? Isn't Hongyu already dead? Feng Qingning widened her eyes and looked at everything familiar around her. Is this her room in the Wei family? She suddenly looked at her hands and saw that they were not terrifying limbs after being cut off. Her fingertips were slender, her palms were white, and her hands were growing well on her arms. Has she been reborn? Hongyu, what year is it now? Feng Qingning immediately sat up and asked. Princess, it's now the 23rd year of Qingping. What's wrong with you, said Hongyu, taken aback when asked 23 years of peace. Surprisingly, I have returned to my first year of marrying Wei Changshu. So, where is Wei Changshu? Feng Qingning immediately asked again. Hongyu looked at her own princess with heartache and said, Princess, I know you can't bear to part with your husband, but today is the 7th day of your husband's life. You must hold on. Later, Feng Qingning was dazed and didn't hear clearly. She leaned back on the bed in a daze, seeming to have truly been reborn. And she was reborn in the 7th place where her good husband, Wei Changshu, pretended to die. She is the legitimate eldest princess of the Great Xia Kingdom. In her previous life, she unexpectedly met the crown prince of the Wei prince's mansion, Wei Changshu. She was deceived by Wei Changshu's sweet words, and despite the decline of the Wei prince's mansion, she was determined to marry him. Even in order to stand up for the Wei prince's mansion, Wei Changshu was not allowed to go with him to Princess Chang's mansion, but instead stayed at the Wei family. Unexpectedly, shortly after getting married, Wei Changshu was exposed for committing a serious crime of bribery and causing multiple deaths. Father was furious and gave him poisoned wine. Due to Wei Changshu's instructions during her lifetime, she remained a widow for 10 years, devoted herself wholeheartedly to taking care of and supporting the Wei family. Even willing to give up her identity as the eldest princess and break away from her parents. However, what she did not expect was that Wei Changshu did not die at all, but rather pretended to die and escaped under the operation of her uncle, the current national uncle Yang Changyuan. For the past decade, Wei Changshu has been secretly helping Yang Changyuan plan a rebellion, and even secretly married her cousin Yang Manman, giving birth to a son and a daughter. Later, they succeeded in their rebellion, and their father, Empress Dowager, and her own younger brother were killed by them. In order to appease Yang Manman with a smile, Wei Changshu cut off her hands and feet and dragged them to the palace gate, allowing her to witness their bodies being trampled into flesh and mud. Finally, she also vomited blood alive and died. Feng Qingning took a deep breath, and the pain in her heart reached all over her limbs. She will always remember that she worked hard for the Wei family, endured hard work, and when she finally lingered on her sickbed, Wei Changshu hugged Yang Manman and appeared in front of her, proudly uncovering everything. And the Wei family, who had put in a lot of effort to support themselves, stood by the bed with sarcastic expressions on their faces. They knew everything from the beginning. Even in order to please Yang Manman and the daughter of the rebel leader who was about to ascend the throne, they slashed themselves in the face one after another, and even the loyal guardian Hong Yu was stabbed more than 10 times and died in front of him. "Princess, what's wrong with you?" Looking at Feng Qingning, Hong Yu spoke anxiously, "I'll go and ask the imperial physician to show you. These days, the princess has been having trouble sleeping and eating. She almost fainted in the funeral hall just now. I finally persuaded her to go back to her room and rest for a while, but the princess's face has become increasingly pale." "No need." Feng Qingning shook her head and tried to suppress the bone-wrenching hatred in her heart. Fortunately, she was reborn, and now everything is still in time. Hong Yu was worried and wanted to continue persuading, but before she could speak, some servants hurriedly came over and shouted outside the door that it was not good. When Hong Yu opened the door, the servant immediately walked in. "Madam, something's wrong. Someone has come to the young master's funeral hall to cause trouble. Please go and take a look." Upon hearing someone causing trouble in the funeral hall, Hong Yu immediately looked at her own princess with concern. And Feng Qingning couldn't help but sneer as she listened to the young lady who called out fluently. Her good mother-in-law once instructed the servants in the mansion, saying that since she had married in, she was a family and did not need to be called a princess. It was more friendly to call her the young lady. At that time, she was really fooled by the lard and actually regarded it as a gesture of goodwill from the Wei family. Seeing that Feng Qingning had not spoken for a long time, the messenger looked up in confusion and said, "Madam, you." Before he could finish speaking, the servant trembled as he met Feng Qingning's cold and piercing gaze. "Got it, I'll be there soon." And Feng Qingning stared at the servant, "Next time if you dare to shout and scream casually, your tongue won't be necessary." The servant burst into a cold sweat on his back and repeatedly kowtowed to plead guilty. Feng Qingning ignored her and walked towards the direction of the Lingtang with Hong Yu. Although she was certain that Wei Changshu was faking his death, the prison guard had previously reported that after drinking poisoned wine, Wei Changshu accidentally knocked over a candle on the table and lit the cell. In the end, he was burned completely unrecognizable. The Wei family, citing the destruction of their body and the need to bury them as soon as possible, did not rest for 7 days and cremated Wei Changshu early. Now, only the memorial tablet remains in the funeral hall. Now thinking about it, their goal is to destroy evidence and conceal the truth that Wei Changshu did not die. However, she now neither knows where Wei Changshu is hiding, nor does she have a body to testify, nor does she know to what extent Wei Changshu and his team have planned the rebellion. So, she cannot rashly testify yet, in order to avoid startling the grass and the snake. Suppressing her thoughts, Feng Qingning had just stepped into the spiritual hall when many people immediately gathered around her. "Princess Chang, you have finally arrived. Your mother-in-law has said that she cannot be the master, so you can only give us an explanation." "That's right, we've all been implicated by Wei Changshu, we must give an explanation." The speakers were all relatives of the Wei family, many of whom had previously served as petty officials, but this time they were implicated by Wei Changshu and most of them were dismissed from their positions. Wei's mother and Wei Changshu's sister Wei Yan'er stood in a corner on the side, without moving a step, allowing Feng Qingning to be surrounded by the crowd. Especially Wei Yan'er, there was still a hint of schadenfreude in her eyes as she watched the play. Feng Qingning's gaze crossed over the crowd and turned to Wei's mother and the others. In the previous life, these people also rushed over to speak up. At that time, Wei's mother and others were hiding in a corner pretending to be weak and pushing themselves out to deal with it. When they tried to force everyone to retreat as the eldest princess, they pretended to be relatives and couldn't be ignored. In the end, she was forced to agree to many unreasonable conditions, resulting in exhaustion and a serious illness. Thinking of this, Feng Qingning sneered in her heart, withdrew her gaze, and spoke in a deep voice, bold. With a majestic reprimand, everyone who had just been gossiping suddenly fell silent. Princess Chang, although you have a noble status, you are now the daughter.In.Law of the Wei family, and your mother.In.Law said she will give us an explanation. A middle-aged man dared to speak up. Feng Qingning remembered that the other party was Wei Changshu's cousin, who had once worked as a small official in the Ministry of Revenue. In his previous life, he had led the most serious trouble. Confession. Why should I explain to you, princess? Feng Qingning sneered, you are also worthy. This rude remark made everyone's faces change. Upon seeing this, Wei's mother frowned and walked forward, preparing to feign a pretentious victory. However, at the next moment, Feng Qingning continued to speak coldly. Just now, my mother asked the servant to report that you were all despicable and shameless, with a heart full of wolves and dogs, and came to threaten her. The princess thought that after all, our relatives were involved, and she was a bit skeptical, but now it seems that they are all true. Chapter 2. On the basis of your following offenses. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Wei's mother paused in her footsteps and looked incredulously at Feng Qingning. She clearly just asked the servant to hurry up and call Feng Qingning over. When did she say such a thing? Qingning, you. Mother, don't worry, with the presence of Princess Ben, they won't do anything to you. Feng Qingning interrupted Wei's mother and spoke with a protective expression on her face. The crowd that had originally surrounded Feng Qingning immediately looked at Wei's mother when they saw this situation. Alright, you were all relatives just now. What did you say? Your daughter.In.Law will definitely compensate us, but you turned your face and insulted us like this. I never said these words at all. Wei Mu quickly spoke up and looked at Feng Qingning eagerly. Qingning, don't talk nonsense. Mother, there's no need to be afraid of anything. As the servant just said clearly, you were forced to come over by these shameless people and had no choice but to invite me over. Feng Qingning walked up to Wei's mother and obediently supported her arm. Don't worry, although most of these people are my elders, I don't want to speak ill of them. But since this is what you mean, I'm not afraid to tear my face from them. Oh, in the previous life, Wei's mother pushed herself out to become a villain. After she finished dealing with it, Wei's mother actually gained a good reputation for being kind, magnanimous, and knowledgeable. In this life, I will never be as she wishes again. Wei Yan'er quickly stepped forward and pulled Feng Qingning apart. What are you talking nonsense about? My mother has never said such things before. Their attitude is light and disrespectful, and they show no courtesy towards the eldest princess when meeting. Wei Yan'er is Wei Changshu's third younger sister. Feng Qingning once saw Wei Changshu's face and was very tolerant of her. She never punished her for impoliteness, and later regarded her as her own younger sister to take care of in every way possible. What about the outcome? Feng Qingning's lips lit up with a smile as she stared intently at the person in front of her. She is the one who secretly poisoned herself. Wei Yan'er felt uncomfortable all over under Feng Qingning's gaze, and instinctively let go of her. Sister-in-law, what are you doing while looking at me like this? I just don't want you to talk nonsense and mistreat my mother. Is that right? Feng Qingning withdrew her gaze and furrowed her brows slightly. Is it because the servant's message was incorrect, and my mother is not dissatisfied? That's right, it must be that scoundrel who added fuel and vinegar and said the wrong thing. Wei's mother immediately took over. We are all relatives, how could I think so? It seems that my princess misunderstood, Feng Qingning said with a smile. Since there's nothing wrong, I'll go back first. Wei's mother was taken aback and didn't expect Feng Qingning to leave like this. She quickly stopped her. Qingning, don't you just ignore it. My mother laughed and said, these are all elders in the clan. As a newlywed woman, I just got married and don't know anything. How to manage it is naturally up to my mother, Feng Qingning said leisurely. That being said, after all, you are Su'er's wife and also the eldest princess. Does my mother hope that I can use my identity as a princess to pressure and arrest them all? Feng Qingning asked innocently. Wei's mother choked fiercely. Damn it, I thought according to Feng Qingning's temperament, after calling her over, she would definitely take care of this matter, but I didn't expect Feng Qingning to have this attitude. Qingning, now that we are a family, we naturally have to face it together. Besides, this is Su'er's funeral hall. Can you just watch them make Su'er feel uneasy after death? Anxiety after death. Feng Qingning turned her head to look at the plaque. Oh, that sounds really familiar. Whether Wei Changshu died or not is clear to Wei's mother and siblings, but they do not feel guilty about using Wei Changshu's death to morally kidnap themselves. After death, they feel uneasy. In the spirit of heaven, they speak such language more fluently than anyone else. Since I don't want to cause any post-mortem anxiety, why don't my mother kick them out as soon as possible? Feng Qingning's gaze returned to Wei's mother, playing with a smile. Or is it that the mother hopes to leave a good impression in the hearts of her family members and wants to encourage this princess to take action? Wei's mother's face was completely ugly, and she never expected that Feng Qingning not only noticed it, but also pointed it out directly. Fortunately, she still kept a hand. Qingning, what are you talking nonsense about? Of course, I never thought about it that way. As Wei's mother spoke, she secretly gave a glance to her cousin who had just made a fuss. The other party is Wei's cousin and has already colluded with Wei's mother. This time, the main focus is on challenging Feng Qingning and using her princess identity to gain more benefits. And this time, besides members of the Wei family, many relatives of the Wei mother's family also came to visit, so the purpose is self-evident. Upon receiving the suggestion from Wei's mother, the other party immediately spoke out loudly, you don't need to push each other off. Princess Chang has a noble status and can make more decisions than the Wei family. You are also Wei Changshu's wife, so you must give us justice. After speaking, he didn't forget to speak up and incite others. For a moment, everyone should reconcile and ask Feng Qingning to give an explanation. Hong Yu spoke out to stop them, urging them not to be rude, but their voice was quickly suppressed. Wei's mother breathed a sigh of relief in her heart, looking at Feng Qingning with a hint of mockery in her eyes. These people are not fools, they naturally know that they can gain more benefits through Feng Qingning. In addition, I have already hinted before to appease them. Whether Feng Qing would rather or not, she must solve this matter. Looking at the crowd blocking in front of her, Feng Qingning let out a slow sigh and said, it seems that I, princess, won't be able to stay out of it today. Princess, our demands are not high either. Whether it's losing money or other benefits, we must make up for our losses. As soon as these words were spoken, they immediately elicited many responses. Feng Qingning curled her lips until everyone had completely calmed down before speaking again, Hong Yu, let someone report to the authorities. For a moment, everyone was stunned, and then someone hurriedly said, why report to the government? Just because I am the eldest princess, and you are the ones who commit crimes below. Feng Qingning glanced at the speaker, revealing a majestic and noble aura that made him unconsciously shut his mouth. Seeing everyone being intimidated for a moment, Wei's mother quickly looked at her own cousin. The latter's heart stiffened and he gritted his teeth boldly, saying, "Since the eldest princess has already married into the Wei family, that's the Wei family. Don't put on any airs here. If you don't give an explanation today, no one will think of going out." Speaking, he also pulled a few people to block the gate of the Lingtang, guarding against Hongyu running out. Hongyu looked at her own princess in embarrassment, and Feng Qingning sneered as she was about to speak. However, suddenly a voice came from outside the spiritual hall. "I thought only Wei Changxiu was unaware of life and death, but now it seems that every Wei family has developed a rebellious spirit." Chapter 3. He came to support her. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. The cold and majestic tone makes many people instinctively follow the sound. The man outside the Lingtang was dressed in a sleek black narrow-sleeved robe, with a straight figure, sharp eyebrows and eyes, and features that seemed to be favored by heaven. He looked so beautiful that it was hard to take his eyes off. What stands out more than appearance is the solemn aura that has been soaked in the battlefield for a long time, which makes people tremble at the sight and instantly reduces their aura. "Marquis of Jinyang." Someone called out, and for a moment, regardless of whether they had known someone before, their faces changed. Jinyang Marquis Gu Xuanji, this name is almost universally known throughout the Great Xia Kingdom. The most famous young general in the imperial city, with a handsome appearance and invincibility, is the object of admiration for many women. He holds military power and is highly valued by the emperor. Even if the 3 nobles and 9 nobles see him, they must show some courtesy. Seeing Gu Xuanji approaching, everyone quickly gave way, fearing that it would be too late and offend the other party. Stepping into the spiritual hall, Gu Xuanji's gaze fell straight on Feng Qingning's face. Seeing this, many people suddenly felt nervous and secretly happy. They have all heard that the relationship between Princess Chang and the Marquis of Jinyang can almost be described as incompatible. For no other reason, it's just that the Marquis of Jinyang once, for some unknown reason, brutally beat Wei Changxiu on the palace path and bedridden him for over a month. Upon learning of this, Princess Chang became extremely angry and, despite her unsuccessful lawsuit, caused a lot of trouble for Marquis Jinyang. Their relationship was strained until Marquis Jinyang left the imperial city and went to the border, gradually revealing the matter. Marquis Jinyang suddenly appeared at this moment, he must have come to find fault. Although Princess Chang has a noble status, if Marquis Jinyang deliberately causes trouble, she definitely won't have much to eat. Coincidentally, if Marquis Jinyang poses a challenge, they may also take the opportunity to force Princess Chang to give more benefits. Thinking of this, many people's faces showed a faint smile, with a look of schadenfreude. And Feng Qingning stared blankly at the person in front of her, her emotions surging in her heart, and her throat seemed to be blocked by something. After a long time, he tried to suppress his emotions and spoke softly, "Gu Xuanji, long time no see." Gu Xuanji's eyes trembled lightly, as if he didn't expect Feng Qingning to speak to him with such a gentle attitude. Before Wei's mother could speak up, her cousin couldn't wait to come forward and please her. "Marquis of Jinyang, you have come at the right time. Please preside over justice for us. Princess Chang, relying on her status, oppresses others and does not show any respect to us elders. It is simply impolite." "Elders?" Gu Xuanji sneered, "You deserve it too." Everyone was taken aback, but before they could react, Gu Xuanji's sharp gaze swept over them. "The eldest princess has a noble status, and even you can lick your face and claim to be elders. Are you trying to disrespect the royal family?" In an instant, many people were sweating profusely from the gaze on their backs. And Gu Xuanji had already looked back at Feng Qingning. After hesitating for a moment, his tone became slightly stiff and he said, "When will the princess have such a good temper? Even they can bully you. Is it because I love my house and love my daughter, that I don't want to tear my face off with people like the Wei family?" This idea popped up, and Gu Xuanji's heart sank again. Listening to the awkward tone of the person in front of her, Feng Qingning couldn't help but blush. Indeed, this princess is too foolish and incompetent. On the 7th day of the previous life, Gu Xuanji had also come. However, at that time, she had just invited the relatives of the Wei family to the backyard and was anxiously busy comforting them. Thinking that the other party was coming to cause trouble, she directly sent someone to curse him away. Since then, Gu Xuanji quickly left the imperial city and began to guard the border for years. They had not seen each other for many years until she was cut off and dragged to the palace gate, only then did they see Gu Xuanji again. Gu Xuanji, who thought she was disgusted by each other after she got married. The other party was soaked in blood, disregarding traps and countless rebels, and killed her all the way from the entrance of the imperial city to the palace gate, desperately trying to save her. He apologized to her, saying that he came late. He told her not to be afraid and said he would definitely protect her. At that time, she realized that Gu Xuanji had never thought of forming enemies with her, nor had he ever blamed her for what he had done. Even injuring Wei Changxiu was because he discovered that Wei Changxiu had private dealings with other women. Later, seeing how much she cared about Wei Changxiu, he was worried that she would feel sad when she found out and also worried that she wouldn't believe him. In the end, he didn't say anything. It was only privately and harshly warned Wei Changxiu before leaving the imperial city with sorrow. When Gu Xuanji told him these things personally, he was already firmly in front of her, with arrows on his back. The charismatic and victorious general, once the most dazzling youth in the imperial city, eventually became the target of countless rebels. If he was incompetent and foolish, how could Gu Xuanji's ending be like this? Gu Xuanji stared blankly at Feng Qingning. He had imagined various reactions when the other party saw him, perhaps angry, and even mercilessly kicked him out. But he never expected that Feng Qingning would be so red-eyed. Is it because I have suffered too much injustice? Gu Xuanji's face suddenly turned cold. Just as everyone thought that Marquis Jinyang could not help but provoke Princess Chang, Gu Xuanji clenched his fists and knelt down. The princess has a noble status and is the last general to speak without any restraint. She made a momentary slip of the tongue and I request that the princess punish her. Looking at Gu Xuanji kneeling on one knee, everyone was once again stunned. What is the situation? Isn't fire and water incompatible between Marquis Jinyang and Princess Chang? Wei's mother looked at the situation with a fierce expression. When Gu Xuanji suddenly appeared just now, she was really startled, afraid that the other party would cause trouble for the Wei family. Even if he doesn't look for Ma, it's not a good thing for Gu Xuanji to respect Feng Qingning so much. If you praise her too high, won't the Wei family be pinned down? Thinking about this, Wei's mother quickly spoke up and said, Marquis Jinyang, please hurry up and don't be too polite. Qingning is now the daughter-in-law of our Wei family, and our Wei family can't afford such a big gift from you. Madame Wei is cautious in her words. Gu Xuanji looked coldly at Wei's mother. I am bowing to Princess Chang and have nothing to do with your Wei family. Even if I no longer look up to the Wei family in my heart, Princess Chang's status is prestigious and etiquette cannot be abolished. As for some people. Gu Xuanji paused slightly, his tone even colder as he spoke. If you want to make the following mistakes, I don't mind dealing with Princess Chang. With these words, the beating was full of meaning, and some of the people who had just troubled Feng Qingning began to tremble unconsciously. Wei's mother was also frightened by Gu Xuanji's gaze and dared not speak again for a moment. Feng Qingning lowered her head to look at Gu Xuanji, who was still kneeling on one knee, as if she didn't speak and he wouldn't get up. She understood that Gu Xuanji was trying to intimidate the Wei family for herself. Taking a deep breath, she walked forward and reached out to help Gu Xuanji up. Marquis Jinyang doesn't need to be like this. I didn't suffer any injustice, just reunited again. For a moment. I was too happy. Chapter 4. The Marquis only looks at the face of Princess Chang. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Gu Xuanji's figure trembled and he looked at Feng Qingning incredulously. Too happy. Is Feng Qingning really happy to see him? Sensing Gu Xuanji's surprise, Feng Qingning completely sorted out her emotions and opened her mouth with a smile. Previously, I was confused and did something wrong, which made me apologize to Marquis Jinyang. Now that you can come to visit, I am extremely grateful. If Marquis Gu doesn't mind, can all the previous issues be resolved? She and Gu Xuanji actually met at a young age. Many years ago, the Gu Ho couple sacrificed their lives for the country. After dying in battle, father and Marquis Gu were once good brothers. Feeling heartbroken, they brought Gu Xuanji to the palace. Gu Xuanji lived in the palace for 2 years until he later invited himself to the military camp. At that time, she and Gu Xuanji got along quite well. So when she learned that the other party had injured Wei Changxiu, she was very angry and felt that no matter what happened, after all, it was her fiancé, and Gu Xuanji had no recollection of the past romance. Therefore, she has indeed done a lot of excessive things. Gu Xuanji looked at Feng Qingning, who was actively seeking peace, and couldn't help but feel a surge of joy in his heart. As he was about to blurt out his promise, he suddenly paused. No, it's not right. The person in front of her clearly disliked him before, and now that Wei Changxiu has just died, she just doesn't hate him because of what happened before. How could she take the initiative to make peace? This doesn't seem like her. Is Lord Gu unwilling? Seeing that Gu Xuanji was just looking at him without speaking, Feng Qingning's expression also became a bit more nervous. Does Gu Xuanji still have dissatisfaction in his heart at this time? No, Gu Xuanji instinctively spoke up, facing Feng Qingning's gaze and coughing lightly. He spoke lightly, the princess has a noble status, so I naturally dare not hold a grudge against her. If the princess has any orders, I can speak up directly, and I will definitely do it. Feng Qingning's heart was slightly stunned. Gu Xuanji felt that he had something to ask of him, so he suppressed his temper and begged for peace. Hou Yi misunderstood a few words and stopped talking, but Feng Qingning still didn't say it in the end. There are too many sudden changes in attitude, which can easily lead to suspicion. Moreover, there are so many people here that it is inconvenient to say more. Fortunately, in this life, Gu Xuanji still lives well, and there is still a chance for everything to change. After swallowing the explanation, Feng Qingning smiled and said, "Thank you very much, Marquis. I wonder. Can Marquis Gu help Princess get these people out?" This is nature, Gu Xuanji looked at Feng Qingning. Even though he felt that the other party had a request for him to adopt such a gentle attitude, he couldn't help but feel happy in his heart. With a shout, the 2 close guards who were originally waiting outside quickly entered the spiritual hall. "Take these people away, and if there is resistance, send them to the Yamen on charges of colliding with the royal family." Gu Xian spoke coldly. "Yes." The 2 guards immediately took orders. "Lord Gu, Wei's cousin wanted to argue a few more words, but the next moment, the long sword in the guard's hand was placed around his neck. He was immediately scared out of his wits and dared not speak, almost crawling out of the spiritual hall. The others were all pale in color, but the opponent was the Marquis of Jinyang with outstanding military achievements. Even if they were really killed, they probably wouldn't be punished for it. For a moment, no one dared to say another word and hurriedly left. Wei's mother's face turned blue and white, and she was extremely angry in her heart, but she dared not say a word. And Wei Yan'er beside her, from the moment Gu Xuanji walked in, her gaze almost fixed on him. At this moment, his cheeks flushed and he boldly walked forward. "I have met Marquis Jinyang, thank you very much for helping my family solve the problem." Although she had always heard about Gu Xuanji before, she had never seen him before. Unexpectedly, he was as handsome as the rumored man. Upon hearing Wei Yan'er's shy and timid voice, Feng Qingning raised her eyebrows and glanced at her. Isn't Wei Yan'er's appearance appealing to Gu Xuanji? Wei Yan'er saw that Gu Xuanji ignored her and secretly gritted her teeth, then gathered the courage to speak up. "Lord Gu, my daughter Wei Yan'er, I will see you today." Miss Wei must have made a mistake. Gu Xuanji finally turned his head to look at her, his eyes very cold. The Wei Prince's mansion has been implicated by your good brother, and now it is full of commoners. You have no right to call yourself a servant girl in front of me, and... Gu Xuanji looked back at Feng Qingning and said, I came today to pay my respects to Princess Chang. I drove away the group of people just now, only for the sake of Princess Chang's face. As for your Wei family, I don't have the qualifications to help you yet. The cold attitude and tone instantly left Wei Yan'er in the same place, with a wave of embarrassment on her face. Feng Qingning met Gu Xuanji's gaze. Although she already knew Gu Xuanji's feelings, looking at these eyes at the moment, she couldn't help but tremble and avoided his gaze. For Gu Xuanji, she was both grateful and guilty. She was extremely happy to see him again, but this heart seeing Feng Qingning avoiding his gaze, Gu Xuanji felt a moment of disappointment in his heart, but then he was relieved. No matter what Feng Qingning thinks in her heart, she is willing to seek his help. With this alone, it is worth it for him to rush back to the imperial city day and night after receiving the news. As for the rest, he never dared to expect too much. Since the matter has been resolved, I will leave first. If anyone dares to trouble the princess in the future. Gu Xuanji paused for a moment. The princess can send someone to the Marquis' mansion in Jinyang to deliver a message at any time. Gu Xuanji let out a bitter smile in his heart, although Feng Qingning might not even take the initiative to find him again. Okay, I remember. A decisive response sounded, and Feng Qingning smiled and said, Thank you, Lord Gu. Gu Xuanji looked at Feng Qingning in surprise once again. Is this tone really willing to ask for his help? Watching Feng Qingning smile, he nodded somewhat absent-mindedly. After a while, he finally turned around and bowed his hand to say goodbye. Although he didn't want her to encounter trouble, he couldn't help but hope that she really took the initiative to find him. Taking the initiative to escort Gu Xuanji to the entrance of the mansion, Feng Qingning withdrew her gaze as she saw the other person's figure disappear. Ignoring Wei's mother and the others who were still in the spiritual hall, Feng Qingning went straight back to her yard, ready to change into a new dress and enter the palace. She can't wait to see her parents and empress. However, as soon as she entered the room with her front foot, Wei Yan'er burst in with her back foot. What is your relationship with Lord Gu? Aren't you incompatible with water and fire? Wei Yan'er frowned and looked at Feng Qingning, her tone both probing and dissatisfied. When I was talking to Gu Xuanji just now, he liked to ignore me, but his attitude towards Feng Qingning was so good. Why? Feng Qingning sat in front of the dressing table, wearing a bronze mirror and looking at Wei Yan'er with mocking eyes. The latter saw that she didn't speak and directly reached out to pull Feng Qingning, dissatisfied and said, Did you hear me? I'm talking to you. Before reaching out and touching Feng Qingning, she slapped her open. The back of her hand was severely hurt by the beating, and Wei Yan'er was momentarily stunned before turning black. Feng Qingning, you actually hit me. Chapter 5. Beating her for her good. You are listening at novel full.audio. Feng Qingning stood up calmly and said, At least you are from the royal family, so you don't know the etiquette. I'm not only your sister.In.law, but also the eldest princess. I can't tolerate you pulling me around at will. Wei Yan'er was extremely angry and pointed at Feng Qingning, cursing, Okay, my brother just died. You're going to put on airs in front of me now. Do you deserve him? Miss Wei, be cautious. Hong Yu beside her immediately spoke up, the princess has a noble status, you. Shut up, can I get you, the servant, to interrupt when I speak? Wei Yan'er interrupted Hong Yu directly and glared angrily at Feng Qingning. Don't forget, my brother was ordered to be executed by your father's emperor. It was your father's emperor who killed him. Don't you feel ashamed in your heart? Shame. Feng Qingning repeated these two words and looked sideways at Wei Yan'er. In her previous life, Wei Yan'er had said many things like this. Although she knew in her heart that Wei Changshu had violated the law, she listened to it many times and felt a little guilty. She then tried even more to make up for the Wei family. However, at this moment, looking at Wei Yenner's straightforward questioning face, she felt extremely disgusted. With a cold smile, Feng Qingning spoke up and said, "Hong Yu, Wei Yenner speaks recklessly and slanders the royal family. Pass on the order of this princess and pull her out to applaud 50 times. Wei Yenner looked at Feng Qingning incredulously, suspecting that she had heard the wrong thing. Even Hong Yu asked with some uncertainty, "Princess, are you talking about clapping your lips, Miss Wei? Otherwise?" Feng Qingning raised her eyebrows, let her make such a mistake and poured dirty water on the heads of this princess and her father. "Feng Qingning, dare you?" Wei Yenner immediately turned black. "My brother. Your brother is already dead, can you still hope that he crawls out of the coffin to make decisions for you?" Feng Qingning spoke softly. "You." Wei Yenner choked and then gritted her teeth loudly, "Even so, you can't hit me. I am the eldest princess of Daxia." Feng Qingning stood up and looked coldly at Wei Yenner. "In front of this princess, I cannot tolerate you as a commoner to be reckless." Feng Qingning had a noble status since childhood and was deeply favored by the emperor and empress, with countless honors and favors. In the past, due to understanding the Wei family and worrying about their constraints, I almost never took the initiative to mention my identity, let alone oppress others as the eldest princess. But at this moment, the aura emanating from her body, and the innate nobility and majesty rushed towards her, making Wei Yenner suddenly unable to speak. It wasn't until she was dragged out of the room by Hong Yu that she suddenly regained consciousness and shouted to stop them. "Feng Qingning, if you dare to hit me, won't you be afraid of offending my brother under the 9 springs? You promised him to take good care of our family." "My princess did agree to him." Feng Qingning walked out of the room and raised her eyebrows to look at Wei Yenner, who was being held in the corridor. However, being well disciplined is also part of taking care of her. After speaking, Feng Qingning ordered to take action. A crisp slap sounded, and Hong Yu and another palace maid took turns to fight. At first, Wei Yenner was still cursing, but after more than 20 slaps, her cheeks were already swollen and red, and she couldn't speak clearly in pain. At this moment, Wei's mother, who had received the news, finally rushed over from the spiritual hall. "Stop, stop!" Wei's mother shouted and rushed forward, pushing aside Hong Yu. "You're such a cowardly servant, you dare to hit Yenner." Seeing Wei's mother, Wei Yenner suddenly became excited again. Struggling to break free from the maid who was holding her, she pointed at Feng Qingning and cried out to Wei's mother. "Mom, she hit me." Wei's mother held on to her daughter in pain and turned her head to look at Feng Qingning in anger. "Did you give the order?" "That's right." Feng Qingning nodded leisurely. "Feng Qingning, Yenner is Suer's most beloved sister. How could you be so cruel to her?" Wei's mother's eyes suddenly filled with gloom. She hasn't even reconciled with Feng Qingning about the Lingtang matter yet, but the other party ordered Yan Er to be beaten again. It's really despicable. This time, Feng Qingning did not miss the malicious look in Wei's mother's eyes. She once felt that this mother-in-law was kind and gentle, and although she occasionally put on airs, she still cared for her. But later she realized that the other party had been spreading rumors behind her back, tarnishing her reputation, and even slandering her for having an affair with a man. Thanks to this mother. In.Law's gift, my former eldest princess eventually became a joke for the entire imperial city. Suppressing her thoughts, Feng Qingning looked at Wei's mother with a face full of questioning and criticism. "Why don't you ask, mother? What did she say?" "No matter what you say, she's Suer's sister, and you shouldn't." Before finishing her sentence, Wei's mother let out a thud in her heart as she met Feng Qingning's cold gaze. Something's wrong. Since the Lingtang just now, Feng Qingning's attitude has changed too much today. What exactly happened? With a gloomy gaze, Wei's mother looked at Wei Yen'er with heartache and asked, Yen'er, what did you say to make your sister.In.Law so angry? I don't have it. Wei Yen'er immediately denied, which was a straightforward statement. Feng Qingning glanced at Hong Yu, who immediately spoke up. Miss Wei not only behaved impolitely and pulled on the princess just now, but also said that the emperor was the culprit who killed the son.In.Law. Wei's mother's face turned pale. Looking at Wei Yen'er, seeing that her own daughter did not deny it, she gritted her teeth and softened her tone, saying to Feng Qingning. I thought it was something. Yen'er is young and just made a slip of her tongue. Why bother with such trivial matters? This is not a small matter. My husband's affair violated the law, but she said it was her father who killed him. At a young age, it was her nonsense, and at a young age, it was her fault. At a young age, it was the entire Wei family ignoring the law and resenting the king. When it came to the last 8 words, Feng Qingning's tone suddenly became cold. Wei Yen'er couldn't help but shudder and said, You, don't scare people here. I just casually said it. Because it was just a casual remark, it further proved the attitude of disrespect towards the royal family. Even in front of this princess, she could say so casually, and behind her back, she didn't know how many rebellious words she wanted to say. Feng Qingning spoke softly. Feng Qingning, you. Wei's mother quickly interrupted Wei Yen'er, who was clearly a bit flustered, and gave Feng Qingning a dry smile twice. Qingning, even if Yen'er said the wrong thing, you are still her sister.In.Law, so why pursue her like this? Besides. Wei's mother looked dark and spoke with a sad expression on her face. She was also too upset because she suddenly lost her elder brother, which is why she spoke recklessly for a moment. If you still have feelings for Su'er in your heart, even for his sake, you shouldn't be so ruthless, do you think so? As soon as Wei's mother said these words, Hong Yu glanced at her own princess. She has been following the princess since she was young, and it is evident that the princess's son.In.Law has a deep affection for her. Now that Lady Wei has spoken for this reason, I believe the princess will not continue to investigate. Feng Qingning looked quietly at Wei's mother in front of her, without intending to immediately break ties with the Wei family. Firstly, everything that the Wei family did to her in her previous life, she wanted to recover one by one. If she were to tear her face now, although it would be enjoyable, it would be too cheap for the Wei family. Secondly, just as she had thought before, she couldn't startle the snake with the grass. If the Wei family realized that she already knew everything, they were afraid that Wei Changxiu would run away without a trace. However, if Wei Yen'er is just spared like this, she wouldn't want to. Feng Qingning sighed and looked sad. Mother, of course I have a genuine affection for my husband. Wei's mother breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Before she could speak, Feng Qingning changed her tone and continued. But precisely because of this slap must continue to be struck. Chapter 6. The attempt for a dowry fails. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. What do you mean by that? Wei Mu frowned tightly, suppressing her dissatisfaction and looking at Feng Qingning. The latter looked at Wei Yen'er helplessly and said, Yen'er is her husband's sister, so I naturally want to take good care of her. But there is no impermeable wall in the world, and her words just now may have been transmitted to the palace. I have now taught her a lesson in front of everyone, and she has been punished. This matter will be over. But if I spare her now, if these words reach the ears of the father. Feng Qing paused for a moment, her tone cold and eerie. I'm afraid it's not as simple as applauding. Wei's mother and Wei Yen'er both shivered together. Wei's mother didn't immediately believe Feng Qingning. Don't scare us here. The emperor is in the palace, and as long as you don't say it, how could you possibly know these words? Feng Qingning looked at Wei's mother innocently. Mother doesn't know that all the people in my yard are transferred from the palace. Some of them follow the orders of their parents and will report back to the palace regularly. I can't stop them. Of course. Feng Qing hesitated for a moment, intentionally sighing helplessly. If you don't believe it, the punishment will be abandoned. But in the future, if my father takes action, I can't say that I have already been punished. I will plead with my father from then on. No matter how much Wei's mother and Wei Yan'er know about Wei Changshu's intention to feign death, the Great Xia dynasty is still stable, and the imperial power is still powerful enough to intimidate people. She doesn't believe it. Wei's mother and Wei Yan'er are really not afraid at all. Sure enough, after listening to Feng Qingning's words, Wei's mother and Wei Yan'er's faces became even more ugly. Especially Wei Yan'er, her face turned pale, as if she had thought of some extremely terrifying consequences. Wei's mother gritted her teeth and looked at Wei Yan'er's swollen and red cheeks with heartache. Even so, there's no need to hit her hard like this. It's a little funny. If father knows that we have teamed up to deceive him, he will probably become even more furious. Even if your father knows, if you plead. A few days ago, I had a big argument with my father over my husband's matter. I'm afraid my father doesn't want to see me now, Feng Qingning interrupted Wei's mother. Wei's mother choked, looked at Feng Qingning, then at Wei Yan'er, and finally gritted her teeth and said. Then let's fight. Mother. Wei Yan'er was instantly anxious. Yan'er, be good, hold on a little longer, Wei's mother quickly comforted her. Feng Qingning hooked her lips without any trace, glanced at Hongyu, and the meaning in her eyes was very obvious, hitting her heavily. Hongyu understood the meaning of her own princess, and although she was puzzled, she still raised her hand and slapped Wei Yan'er, who had been caught again. The sound of heavy slaps accompanied Wei Yan'er's cries of pain kept ringing. Wei's mother stomped her feet anxiously, but there was nothing she could do and she could only watch helplessly. By the time the 50 slaps were over, Wei Yan'er's face was swollen like a mantu with clear finger marks. My mouth was filled with a bloody smell, and I opened my mouth before finally spitting out a big mouthful of blood foam. Yan'er. Wei's mother exclaimed in panic and quickly asked someone to help Wei Yan'er go back to rest, while also rushing to invite a doctor. Are you satisfied now? Wei's mother stayed and looked at Feng Qingning with a resentful tone. Isn't the meaning of my mother's words blaming me? But you just said to continue fighting, Feng Qingning looked aggrieved. Oh, it's shameless to accept one's own opinion while being afraid of something wrong, and at the same time, to have this account on one's own. Wei's mother choked fiercely again, looking at Feng Qingning with a gloomy expression. The latter calmly met her gaze, as if everything he did was really for the sake of Wei Yan'er. Wei's mother didn't see any problem, but the incident at the Lingtang today has already made her feel angry. Looking at Feng Qingning's appearance again at this moment, I feel a sense of displeasure in my heart. No, although the plan for the Lingtang incident was not successful, Feng Qingning couldn't easily avoid it. If we don't hold on to the long Princess Feng Qingning now, how can we let her benefit the Wei family in the future? Thinking of this, Wei's mother's eyes rolled and she had another calculation in her heart. When she spoke again, her tone had already slowed down. Qingning, just now it was because my mother was too anxious and spoke a bit too far. Don't take it for granted. Watching Wei's mother change her face quickly, Feng Qingning suppressed her sarcasm and smiled, saying, Where did my mother say that? How could I blame you? After all, we are a family. This was Wei's mother's favorite saying before, and now it's her turn to use this grandiose lie. Upon hearing Feng Qingning speak like this, a hint of pride flashed in Wei's mother's eyes, and she frowned and sighed again. Qingning, since we are a family, I won't talk about two families as a mother. I just finished handling Suer's funeral, and with all the previous arrangements, there is now a shortage of silver in the mansion. Do you think? Can we take out your dowry as an emergency first? Feng Qingning is at least the eldest princess. She has seen the dowry list, which is really eye-catching. Since she refused to spend money and effort to appease those relatives, she decided to put her dowry in her own hands, which would be more secure. Upon hearing these words, Hong Yu couldn't help but frown and said, "Madam, I'm afraid it's a bit inappropriate for you to be brave. The princess has only recently married and is now a widow." Mrs. Wei didn't want to comfort the princess and make her stay at the Wei family stable. How could she so quickly think about the princess's dowry? Moreover, before the son.In.Law was imprisoned, all kinds of management were clearly paid by the princess. She watched as the Wei family did not pay much money from beginning to end. Wei's mother coldly glanced at Hong Yu and said, "I'm discussing with your princess. This is Wei's mansion, it's not your turn to interrupt casually." The old lady is right. Feng Qingning looked at Hong Yu and said, "Don't interrupt casually. Besides, since we are a family, there is no need to have such a share. The silver can be used together." "You're right." Wei's mother immediately responded, her eyes gleaming with greed. Hong Yu frowned and hesitated to speak as she glanced at her own princess, but in the end, she still lowered her head to admit her mistake. "Qingning, let's have someone count our dowry now and try to convert it into silver to cover the expenses in the mansion. Don't worry, I won't let anyone waste it. Having a good daughter.In.Law like you is a blessing for our Wei family." Wei's mother scanned the gloomy expression on her face when she saw Wei Yener being beaten just now and smiled kindly. Feng Qingning also smiled and said, "Mother, there's no need to be so troublesome. The dowry is so many and miscellaneous, it takes too much time to count. Do you mean to move directly?" Wei's mother's greed was almost overwhelming. Feng Qingning shook her head leisurely and said, "What is in the dowry and how much silver it is worth? Hong Yu knows best. She has studied it in the palace, but she is a good accountant." "So." Feng Qingning paused slightly and watched as Wei's mother spoke. "Just let Hong Yu take over the accounting and warehouse in the mansion directly. Who said I came to apologize in Chapter 7? You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Wei's mother's smile froze on her face. What does it mean? Feng Qingning is not only unwilling to take out her dowry, but also wants to hold all the silver money of the Wei family in her palm. "Qingning, this may not be suitable," Wei's mother gave a stiff smile. "This is impossible. If both the accounting and warehouse were handed over to Feng Qingning's people, how much has been spent these days, as well as the current financial situation of the Wei family, wouldn't it be clear at a glance? There's nothing inappropriate. Hong Yu's ability to manage accounts has even been praised by her mother. You can rest assured to leave it to her mother." Feng Qingning glanced at Hong Yu with a glance. The latter looked at her own princess with confusion. Although she had studied some accounting, she was far from proficient, and the empress had never praised her. The princess, when Feng Qingning noticed the smile on her lips, Hong Yu immediately reacted and spoke up. "Don't worry, madam. I will definitely manage the accounts well and make no mistakes. Moreover, I don't need to receive any extra monthly payment. I can also save the silver money from the accountant in the mansion." "That's really great, Hong Yu. It's not too late. You should go to the accounting room today to hand it over," Feng Qingning instructed with a smile. "No way." Wei's mother quickly stopped, her expression almost hanging on her face. She gritted her teeth and frowned as she looked at Feng Qingning. "Qingning, if you don't want to hand over your dowry, you can speak frankly. Why bother beating around the bush like this? I have already agreed to what my mother said, but the dowry counting is too complicated. On the contrary, since there is no silver left in the mansion, it will definitely be easier to hand it over." Feng Qingning frowned slightly, paused for a moment, and continued to speak. "And just now, my mother also said that we are all part of the same family, so we just need to spend the money together. Since that's the case, why bother dividing the accounts with someone else? Does it mean? In my mother's heart, this princess's daughter.In.Law has always been an outsider, and even the people I brought are not trustworthy." At this point, Feng Qingning's tone became noticeably cold, with a strong sense of disappointment. If that's the case, then I don't have to continue to stay at the Wei family and cause trouble for my mother. Let's just cut the deal. Wei's mother's face changed and she quickly spoke up, of course, that's not what I mean by being a mother. If we break off our relationship with Feng Qingning now, wouldn't we not be able to reap any benefits? Does that mother agree to Hong Yu's accounting? Feng Qingning followed closely. Wei's mother choked again, feeling like she had eaten a dead fly in her heart. However, when it came to this matter, it was not easy to refuse again. She gritted her teeth and tried to pull out a little smile. Good child, let Wei Nyang think about this matter again, after all, it's not urgent in these 1 or 2 days. Feng Qingning naturally knew that it was impossible for Wei Mu to hand over the financial power of the mansion now. Looking at her appearance, she raised an eyebrow leisurely. Okay, take your time to think, mother. It's not urgent. Anyway, her dowry won't even be given to the Wei family. Unable to achieve her goal, Wei's mother gritted her teeth and left. After resolving the Wei family's mother and daughter, Feng Qingning did not delay any longer and immediately brought Hong Yu into the palace. Half an hour later. At the entrance of the palace, the carriage stopped. Looking at the towering palace gate in front of her, Feng Qingning's heart was filled with sourness. In her previous life, after breaking away from her parents, she had not stepped into this palace gate for a full 7 years. And the last time she came here was when Wei Changshu ordered her to cut off her hands and feet, dragging her like a stray dog on the street to this place. Then, I witnessed with my own eyes that the empress and father, as well as her own younger brother, were trampled into flesh and mud by wild horses. Princess, what's wrong with you? Hong Yu's inquiry sounded. Feng Qingning regained consciousness, restrained her emotions, shook her head and said, "It's okay, let's hurry up and enter the palace." Before he could finish speaking, he saw a familiar figure walking out from the palace gate. Feng Qingning trembled suddenly and stared intently at the newcomer. When young Manman walked out of the palace gate and saw Feng Qingning, a fierce expression flashed in her red phoenix eyes, but then quickly became gentle and gentle. With a friendly smile, he quickly stepped forward and said, "Cousin, why did you suddenly return to the palace?" Feng Qingning looked at the friendly smile, but what appeared before her was the other person holding Wei Changshu's arm, sarcastic and arrogant. "Feng Qingning, your parents and empresses have all died, and your identity as the eldest princess will soon be mine. To be honest, I have hated you from childhood to adulthood. You have a noble status, outstanding appearance, and have received praise from everyone. It seems like I was born to be suppressed by you, but why? Now everything finally belongs to me. As for you, now you're just an ugly monster with knife marks on your face." Word by word, piercing to the bone. If it weren't for what she had seen with her own eyes, she wouldn't have thought of such a cruel heart hidden beneath the delicate and kind skin of her cousin. "Cousin, are you okay? Why aren't you talking?" Young Manman looked at Feng Qingning with concern. Facing her gaze, Feng Qingning curled her lips bit by bit and said, "It's natural." "Why, do I look really bad?" Young Manman's face darkened, but soon he smiled and said, "Of course I didn't mean that. It's just that Prince Wei has just died, and I'm worried about you in my heart." She received news that Feng Qingning had just had a big argument with the emperor and empress a few days ago. According to theory, she shouldn't have entered the palace so quickly. Is it because she wants to go to the palace to apologize? Thinking of this, young Manman frowned inwardly and said, "Cousin, did you enter the palace today?" "Naturally, it's to see my mother," Feng Qingning said. In the previous life, she had a falling out with her father, emperor, and empress. Young Manman had repeatedly defended her in front of her, and even tried to persuade her on the surface, but always pretended to unintentionally reveal her cold and indifferent attitude, making her feel that she really didn't want her daughter anymore. At that time, she did not doubt young Manman, but because of her words, she became more and more willing to enter the palace again. But now, thinking about it, it's possible that young Manman had long been eager to break away from his parents and give up his identity as the eldest princess. Upon hearing Feng Qingning's words, young Manman's eyebrows furrowed even tighter, her mind turned, and she deliberately sighed and said, "Cousin, you'd better come back at another time. I just came out of my aunt's palace, and although I tried my best to persuade her, it didn't seem to have much effect. I guess my aunt's heart should still be blaming you. Even if you apologize now, she may not forgive you." Feng Qingning sneered in her heart, but she frowned and spoke in a cold and stern tone, imitating the appearance of young Manman. "Apologize? Why should I apologize? Isn't my cousin entering the palace today to apologize? Oh, it's clear that it's just my parents' ruthlessness. I'm going to the palace today to discuss with them again, not to apologize." Young Manman's eyes lit up, so Feng Qingning came into the palace to argue. "Cousin, auntie, after all, she is your mother's queen. You really? What about Empress Mother? Now that I have married someone, I naturally have to prioritize my husband's family. Today is my husband's 7th day, and if it weren't for them, my husband wouldn't have died. How could I swallow this breath?" Feng Qingning spoke excitedly. Upon hearing these words, young Manman's heart immediately burst into joy. Feng Qingning, this idiot. She was planning to use this argument to damage the relationship between Feng Qingning and the emperor and empress. Unexpectedly, before she could take action, Feng Qingning took the initiative to cause trouble. Chapter 8. Tearing Through Young Manman's Mask. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cousin, you still need to remain calm. Although my aunt is indeed somewhat heartless, and you have lost your husband, it is truly pitiful. However, you are still a junior, so please forgive them. Young Manman pretended to persuade a few words, but upon closer listening, it was not difficult to detect a hint of anger, but she was confident that Feng Qingning would not suspect her at all. Seeing that Feng Qingning remained unmoved and insisted on entering the palace, young Manman no longer persuaded her, but instead accompanied her there. If the empress scolded her, she could still help to speak up and go to the empress palace with Feng Qingning. Empress Yang sat on the soft couch, exhausted in thought. Since the last argument, she has been having trouble sleeping and eating for several consecutive days, with a heart-wrenching. At this moment, hearing the palace report that the long princess had arrived, I finally felt a sense of joy in my heart. Quickly pass her in. Feng Qingning and young Manman walked into the hall together. Seeing Empress Yang's face full of pity, young Manman was worried that the other party had spoken soft words first, so she quickly spoke first. "Auntie, although my cousin had a bad attitude before, don't blame her. Today is Wei Gongzi's 7th day, and it's normal for my cousin to feel sad and angry. No matter what she says, please forgive her a little more." The expression of pity on Yang Huang's back froze. Did Ning Er enter the palace today not because she missed her mother, but because she came to blame her? Ning Er. Empress Yang frowned in disappointment and sadness. "You don't understand that Wei Changshu's affairs are related to the law, and even your father cannot tolerate it. As for the prison fire, it was an accident, and we didn't expect it." Since entering the hall, Feng Qingning's gaze has been fixed on Empress Yang's face. Now hearing these words, I couldn't help but blush my eyes completely. Although 1,000 words surged into her heart in an instant, she could feel young Manman's gaze on the side watching the show, and she quickly suppressed her emotions. "Cousin, don't blame auntie." Young Manman looked at Feng Qingning, feeling proud but with a persuasive expression on her face. Seeing Feng Qingning remain silent, Empress Yang became even more saddened and disappointed. "Ning'er, if you enter the palace today to take responsibility." "Mother." Feng Qingning finally spoke and interrupted Empress Yang's words. The next moment, she knelt down towards her. "Mother, my daughter realized her mistake." Young Manman was taken aback for a moment. "What's the situation? Isn't Feng Qingning here to cause trouble?" Empress Yang was also stunned. After regaining her senses, she quickly stepped forward and helped up her own daughter. Ning-Er, if you have anything to say, what are you doing? Mother, my daughter knew that I was too confused before, and she blamed father and mother for arguing with you in a rebellious manner. It was my daughter's fault. Feng Qingning looked at Empress Yang and couldn't help but shed tears. Looking at her own daughter's appearance, Empress Yang quickly wiped her tears and said, stop talking, it's already over. Mother, every mistake is due to her daughter's bad behavior. But can she forgive her daughter this time? Don't despise me, let alone deny me. Where are you talking about? How could the Queen Mother not recognize you? She had never thought about it like this before. Empress Yang quickly spoke up. Feng Qingning spoke with a bitter tone, Mother, you don't need to comfort me. My daughter knows that I hurt your heart this time, and you should blame me. My cousin has told me that you don't want to see me at all. It's just that my daughter misses you too much, and today she couldn't help but dare to enter the palace. What? Empress Yang instinctively looked at young Manman. The latter had already changed his face when he heard Feng Qingning apologize, and now hearing this, his face turned even darker. Cousin, what are you talking nonsense about? When did I say such things? Damn it. What's going on with Feng Qingning? Not only did she not argue, but she also said this directly. Cousin, I know you're also doing it for my own good. Don't worry, even if the Queen Mother knows you've informed me, she won't blame you. Speaking, Feng Qingning blessed Empress Yang's body again. Mother, please don't misunderstand. My cousin didn't mean to speak ill of you and the Emperor. She was just worried that her daughter would enter the palace and apologize in your anger. Not only did she not receive your understanding, but she would also be punished. In addition, she sympathized with her daughter and fought for me, which is why she conveyed the message that I must not enter the palace. Empress Yang lowered her expression and looked at young Manman with suspicion. Man, what's going on? What I'm telling you is clearly about my concern for your cousin, and I've never really blamed her. Moreover, I really hope she can calm down and enter the palace. You don't know. Even though Man was just in front of her and said she would help persuade Ning-Er to return to the palace as soon as possible, how could she turn her head and advise Ning-Er not to enter the palace? Auntie, I don't know what's going on either. I've never said anything like this before. Young Man quickly spoke up. Damn it, it seems that what Feng Qingning just said at the palace gate was just a lie. But why did Feng Qingning suddenly start exposing herself? Is it possible that she realized that her previous words were all intentional? Young Manman's heart was in a panic. She had put in so much effort in the past to leave a good impression in front of the Emperor and Empress. She must not be destroyed by Feng Qingning, this slut. Thinking of this, she quickly pinched herself secretly, forcing out some tears, and said with full grievance. Cousin, I clearly hope that you and your aunt can reconcile, and you can apologize to your aunt. I am also happy for you from the bottom of my heart, but why did you lie and frame me? Looking at the tears squeezed out by young Man, Feng Qingning sneered in her heart. Young Man is best at pretending to be clever and obedient, and she has relied on this in the past to gain the trust and favor of Empress Dowager. She will naturally tear off her mask, at least not let Empress Dowager continue to be deceived by her. Cousin, I really can't understand what you're saying. You've never done anything wrong to me before. Why did I frame you? Feng Qingning frowned and looked puzzled. Young Manman's heart trembled as she quickly calmed down and said, Of course, I won't do anything wrong to my cousin. It's just that my cousin is talking nonsense in front of my aunt. You. Just now at the entrance of the palace, didn't you personally say that although you tried to persuade me, my mother didn't want to see me at all and asked me not to enter the palace and go back home? Feng Qingning looked at Empress Yang with a puzzled expression on her face. Mother, although I don't know why my cousin said I wronged her, Hongyu can testify to those words just now. Returning to Empress Dowager, I also heard it, and it was indeed what Miss Yang said personally, said Hongyu. Young Manman strongly defended, cousin, Hongyu is the maid next to you, of course she. If Hongyu's words are not enough to win trust, then there are also drivers and guards guarding the palace gate. Anyway. Feng Qingning paused for a moment, while Yu Guang looked at young Manman with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Then, he continued with a bitter expression. In short, after being a mother, I did not frame my cousin. I know that in your heart, you have always thought that my cousin is obedient and sensible. Perhaps you are more willing to believe her words, but my daughter really did not lie or frame her. Chapter 9. Counterattack. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Feng Qing was more and more aggrieved as she spoke, her beautiful eyes filled with tears, but she still pretended to be strong and didn't let it fall. Haoning, you are the daughter that the mother loves the most. How could the mother not believe you? Empress Yang was so heartbroken that she immediately hugged her and stroked Feng Qingning's hair. The familiar and gentle embrace made Feng Qingning happily squint her eyes, sniffing her mother's scent and craving her breath. Since she had feelings for Wei Changshu, Feng Qingning gradually divorced the emperor and empress, and even cut off contact with them after getting married. In her past life, Feng Qingning was extremely foolish. She felt that for Wei Changshu's sake, even being a widow was not a problem, and the separation from her parents was not a problem. But as long as she remembered the ending of her past life, Feng Qingning couldn't hide her hatred and her body couldn't help but tremble. Ninger, what's wrong with you? But where are you feeling unwell? Block. Quickly declare to the imperial physician. Empress Yang was so frightened that she immediately wanted to declare to the imperial physician when she noticed something unusual about the person in her arms. Listening to the person's panicked tone, Feng Qingning finally regained consciousness and apologetically grabbed Empress Yang's hand as she explained. Mother, my son is fine, don't worry too much. Feng Qingning grabbed Empress Yang's hand and put it on her cheek with a smiling face. My son is just overjoyed. Silly child. Empress Yang was stunned for a moment. After seeing the crystal-clear tears hanging from the corner of Feng Qingning's eyes, she felt a sour taste in her nose and felt very uncomfortable in her heart. Not seen for a while, Feng Qingning has become quite haggard. Even if covered with powder, Empress Yang can still see her fatigue from it. Just now, Empress Yang has not been able to see clearly. Now seeing Feng Qingning's appearance, I couldn't help but blush and say, it's really. You've suffered so much. Empress Yang had countless words she wanted to share with others, but she had to hold back because she was worried about saying too much and making too many mistakes. Feng Qingning naturally noticed Empress Yang's entanglement, but due to young Manman's presence, she didn't say much. After shaking his head, he sat side by side with the other person, as intimate as before. Young Manman, on the other hand, stood not far away, quietly watching this scene of maternal kindness and filial piety, with jealousy and resentment particularly evident in her eyes. When young Manman noticed their gaze, she quickly lowered her head and looked as if she had been greatly wronged. If placed in the past, young Manman's move was still effective for Empress Yang. But what she did seemed to sow discord between Empress Yang and Feng Qingning, whether true or false, she couldn't let go of it. Can we say it now? Young Manman, why do you misinterpret the meaning of this palace? Why do you want to block the princess from coming to see this palace? Empress Yang opened her mouth with a cold face and shook young Manman out of fear, making her face even more ugly. Anti-Ming Jian. I dare not do anything to distance my aunt from my cousin. Young Manman knelt down with red eyes, and even at this moment, she still had no intention of changing her mind. Someone. Go and call the groom and the palace gate guards over. Our palace wants to see who is lying. Empress Yang doesn't plan to just forget about it. As long as it's related to Feng Qingning, she must be foolproof and not have any mistakes. Mother, Feng Qingning gently patted the back of Empress Yang's hand and advised softly, Mother, my cousin just did something wrong because she was worried about me. Please spare her this time. Moreover, if such a trivial matter is well known to everyone, there may be many people saying that I act impulsively and don't look like a princess. Feng Qingning sighed helplessly at this point. Her reputation is already bad enough, no matter how bad it is, it's actually nothing. Just for today's matter, Feng Qingning didn't want to do too much. Young Manman has a deep city and is not easy to deal with. If these small things provoke her, it is not a wise move. Moreover, Feng Qingning doesn't know when she and Wei Changshu actually hooked up. Even if it's to catch Wei Changshu's handle, they can't get two into a stalemate. Thinking of this, Feng Qingning immediately stood up and walked beside young Manman, pulling him up with a smile. The palace is no different from other places. Even a small matter can be magnified infinitely. Therefore, in the future, whether you are the princess or your cousin, you must be cautious in your words and actions. Manman remembers the teachings of Princess Chang. Young Manman obediently lowered her head and whispered, before leaving the palace shortly after. Where Feng Qingning and Empress Yang couldn't see, young Manman's face was very fierce, filled with full hatred. She didn't know why Feng Qingning suddenly had an epiphany, but today's shame, she will definitely take back all of it. On weekdays, even when I see her, she doesn't seem like such a person. I didn't expect that behind the scenes. Empress Yang frowned in dissatisfaction, she didn't want to just let young Manman go. But unfortunately, Feng Qingning insisted and could only let it go. Although young Manman was spared, Empress Yang still couldn't calm her dissatisfaction. She didn't understand when she had become such a malicious person, at least because she had watched her own child grow up. Mother, don't be angry. My cousin was also worried that I would make mother unhappy again, so she did this. I can understand, Feng Qingning shook her head and whispered. Today's matter, Feng Qingning just wanted to make Empress Yang unhappy with young Manman. So it seems that the effect is quite good. Feng Qingning smiled and coaxed Empress Yang, and soon put the unpleasant things behind her. That night, Feng Qingning returned after having dinner. It's rare to have such a long conversation with Empress Yang, and her mood is particularly smooth. After washing up, Feng Qingning leaned against the window lattice with a wine pot, gazing at the stars in the sky with a complex expression. Speaking of which, it seems like she hasn't rested like this for a long time, admiring the stars in the sky. The autumn night scenery, for some unknown reason, carried a hint of inexplicable desolation. Feng Qingning just looked at it and felt particularly desolate. Just as she was grieving for spring and autumn, she suddenly seemed to see someone passing by on the opposite roof. Although the speed was extremely fast, it still allowed Feng Qingning to capture a trace of the afterimage. If it weren't for her never misreading, she would have suspected that she was blinded. No, she doesn't seem to have missed it all. Isn't Wei Changshu the most wrong person she has ever seen? Thinking of this, Feng Qingning laughed at herself and then picked up her glass and drank it all in one gulp. Princess, drinking too much is harmful to your health. You've had enough to drink today. Hongyu anxiously snatched the glass from her hand and advised softly. Hongyu knew that her own princess had a tragic love affair with her husband. Even when he went, he thought about being with him. Keisai people have passed away, and those who live must always live. Even if it's not for oneself, we have to think about the Empress Dowager who worries about her. It's just a small cup, why aren't I even allowed to drink wine? Feng Qingning snatched the wine jug with dissatisfaction. Besides, I'm happy today. Can't I drink 2 more cups if I'm happy? Chapter 10. Foolish Man. You are listening at novel full.audio. She didn't want to get drunk. It can be seen that people are so obstructing, but Feng Qingning would rather get drunk. It's both reckless and relaxing. Unfortunately, Feng Qingning didn't intend to get drunk alone. Instead, she pulled in Hongyu and forced her companions to drink. What's wrong with standing? Drink with me. The two of them didn't have a good tolerance for alcohol, but they both became intoxicated in a small pot. Those past memories, like a tide, invaded Feng Qingning's mind, using her alcohol to vent all her fears. For the first time, she went crazy and pulled Hong Yu to cry and laugh, but she couldn't say a word for a long time. I waited until I was tired before falling into a deep sleep. After she fell asleep, a man appeared inside the room. After she fell completely asleep, a man appeared inside the room, looking at her with a worried expression on his face. It has to be said that Feng Qingning's eyes are really good. Just now, Gu Xuanji stood closer and retreated very quickly, but was still caught by someone. Perhaps she is still drunk, so she should wait until tomorrow when she wakes up and forget nothing, right? So everything in the palace is just your forced smile. What exactly happened to make you numb yourself in this way? Gu Xuanji's face was painful, and he wanted to reach out and smooth Feng Qingning's eyebrows, but he remained frozen in the air, his expression becoming increasingly sad. Gu Xuanji. I don't know what exactly happened to Feng Qingning in her sleep. With just 3 light and floating words, Gu Xuanji was startled and suddenly woke up. So it was just a murmur from Feng Qingning's sleep, and Gu Xuanji kept his nerves tense. Seeing that there was no intention of waking up, he breathed a sigh of relief and walked over, gently carrying the person back to the bed. Feng Qingning slept soundly, his eyebrows gradually relaxed, and he slept much more peacefully, as if everything that had just happened was just his illusion. Looking at her sleeping face, Gu Xuanji felt particularly bitter in his heart. Feng Qingning, do you even think of me when you're asleep? His tone was melancholic, and he couldn't get an answer to any questions he asked. Gu Xuanji naturally knew this too, and his words were more like something he was saying to himself. After a long time, Gu Xuanji withdrew his gaze and helped people cover their blankets before leaving here. After returning to the mansion, Gu Xuanji's mind was full of thoughts about Feng Qingning. The weight of those 3 words is really too heavy, and even after spending the whole night, Gu Xuanji couldn't come up with any reason. The next day, when he appeared staring at a black circle under his eyes, his attendant Li Ming couldn't believe his own eyes. Marquis, why did you grind yourself into this kind of situation for the matter of Princess Chang? Is it really worth it? Li Ming and Gu Xuanji grew up together, and their friendship naturally became much better than others. It's just about Feng Qingning, the two of them have never been able to reach a consensus. Seeing him speak like this, Gu Xuanji's face darkened and he said, what do I want to do? When did I get your turn to intervene? Do you think that I have too few tasks assigned to you? How's the investigation on the matter in the west of the city going? Gu Xuanji glared back with a single glance. You still have the last 2 days, don't forget. Marquis. Can't you extend the deadline for another 2 days? Li Ming immediately drooped his head and said, the situation in the west of the city is a bit tricky. Can't I just handle it casually? When you have time to talk nonsense with me, don't you have time to find a way? Gu Xian snorted coldly, showing no mercy. I don't care what method you use, but if you can't complete the task, go and receive the punishment yourself. Gu Xian snorted coldly, then took out an envelope from the bottom drawer of the desk and threw it to Li Ming. Do you really want to do this? Li Ming hesitated as he held the envelope, clearly unwilling to do so. If we follow Gu Xuanji's instructions, once the contents of this envelope are leaked, the other party will not give up easily. And with Gu Xuanji's handling method, I'm afraid it won't take 5 days, and if convenient, it will be found in the Marquis' mansion of Jinyang. Even if something happens, it's still my responsibility. What's there to be afraid of? Gu Xuanji frowned in displeasure and said coldly. Gu Xuanji has already made plans for this matter, so it's useless for anyone to say too much. This letter must be spread, and it must be well known to everyone in the capital. Otherwise, why did he spend so much effort getting it? The time he can stay in the capital is already limited, so he must seize every minute to pave the way for that person before leaving. Yes. Gu Xuanji said that he was no too, but although Li Ming was conflicted in his heart, he quickly agreed and left the royal mansion. The feeling of being drunk is actually not good. Feng Qingning woke up just after lunch. She didn't know why, just a small pot of wine could make her head crack. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Wei's mother came looking for her in a fierce manner. Judging from that, I'm afraid I'm eager to split Feng Qingning into pieces. Seeing someone approaching with a fierce force, as if they were coming to provoke a teacher to question him, Hong Yu was stunned for a moment and returned to the room with a black face. Princess, the old lady is here. You asked her to wait in the outer courtyard, Feng Qingning said impatiently. Before she could say anything more, Wei Yan'er kicked open the door and entered the room with Wei's mother in a dark face. Feng Qingning. Mother came to see you in person. What kind of princess airs are you putting on? Are you too disrespectful of me? Feng Qingning was sipping the sobering soup when someone yelled at her, almost spilling it all on her body. She looked dissatisfied at her clothes that had been sprinkled with soup and said in a tone of voice, "What does mother.In-law say? The princess is feeling unwell today. Can't we talk about anything later?" Hong Yu also stood in front of Feng Qingning, looking at her with a cold face. Also, who gave you the courage to break into the princess's bedroom at will? Even if you are the son.In-law's younger sister, you are not qualified to commit such a crime. You all dare to do such a thing, why do I have to behave properly towards you? Since you have already married into my Wei mansion, put away your princess airs. Who will show you the show? Wei Yan'er did not shrink back from Hong Yu's scolding, but instead intensified her push aside Hong Yu and questioned Feng Qingning with her hands crossed over her waist. This princess is not putting on airs, after all, what Hong Yu said was just the most ordinary etiquette. Has my aunt not learned what etiquette is? What kind of etiquette is it to shout so loudly? Feeling disgusted as she wiped away the stains on the hem of her clothes, Feng Qingning looked up at Wei's mother and said innocently, "What does mother think?" Feng Qingning, who are you saying is uncivilized? Wei Yan'er's face turned red with anger from her. Just as she was about to come forward to argue, she was pulled back by Wei's mother, who scolded her behavior. What's the point of being noisy?